What's up, heathens? Today we do not have KC here to correct me on my bad interpretation or reading of what we're going to be covering today, so let me just give you guys a lowdown real quick, shall we? Okay, so basically, right, we have Inanna. Okay, she time travels back into the first century. Well, for her, it's the future. And she sees Jesus and was like, hey, that looks like a good idea. And so she time travels back, and then she reenacts like a lot of the same things that Jesus did, but she had her people write it down first. So really, it's Jesus that is the one being copied off of, and Inanna's the cheating bitch. See, nobody's here to counteract me. I guess I got to do it myself. Before we get into that, I do want to remind you guys about the Faithless Forum that we're going to be having. If you guys would like to purchase tickets for that, the link is in the description down below. I would also like to take time out to thank Gracie for sending me some fan art. I really appreciate it, Gracie. I hope that more people will submit fan art, but for right now, I'm going to find a picture frame. I'm going to put this in a picture frame and put it on my wall. So thank you again, Gracie. What's up, heathens? How you guys doing today? So today we're going to be going over how the Descent of Inanna really relates to the Jesus mythos, and how her story is a perfect skeleton for Jesus and like his passion story in general. Both figures, they descend from heaven, and they are put under this passion, and they die, and then they are resurrected into a new life that signifies new life for the people that follow them. So, you know, it's a very basic skeleton story, but we have a lot of supporting information in the Bible that shows that this Inanna myth heavily affected the Jewish theology. All right, so first I want to cover like how Inanna is exactly connected to the Bible. There are three passages in the Bible where Inanna is connected. First, we have Ezekiel 8:14 that says, "Then he brought me to the entrance of the north gate of the house of the Lord, and I saw a woman sitting there mourning the god Tammuz." Tammuz in the Inanna descent story is substituted for Inanna in the underworld, and this is how she has new life. Well, this is one of the reasons why she can ascend and have new life. Jeremiah 7:18, the children gather wood, the fathers light the fire, and the women knead the dough and make cakes to offer to the Queen of Heaven. They pour out drink offerings to other gods and arouse my anger. So as you can see, the Queen of Heaven is another name for Inanna. In case you guys didn't know, Inanna is the Sumerian goddess of love, beauty, sex, desire, fertility, war, combat, justice, and political power. So she's got a lot of jobs. There's another one, Jeremiah 44:15 through 26, which has a lot of information in it. If you want to go and look at that, the links are in the description. But basically, it's God saying that the Jews, I'm pissed off at you because you're worshiping Tammuz and Inanna, and so I'm going to shun you and everything like that. Basically, it's God hating on the Jews once again, which we are, accustomed to. Now let's get into the actual Inanna's descent. I'm not going to read the entire thing, of course. That would be incredibly boring. There are magic numbers in this, namely 3 and the number 7. Like at the very beginning, she takes 7 divine powers in her hand, and she also takes a whole outfit to go to the underworld or the netherworld or whatever. And she instructs somebody to do specific things after she goes to the underworld and she gets there, namely to lacerate themselves all over the place and to bang drums and all this other stuff and whatnot. And basically she sets up the entire story for her being down there. She says that once she gets down there and whatnot, the person's to go to like her all these 3 different houses and beg for them to not kill Inanna, but it's the third one that finally gives them like the things that are necessary to revive her, which is life-giving plant and a life-giving water. And she has to go through a passion. This passion comes in the form of having to go through 7 gates to the netherworld, and at each gate she has something taken from her, and finally she's left naked and her clothes are taken away. Which, in case you guys don't get the imagery there, that's similar to Jesus. Jesus has all of his clothes and whatnot taken away. He's given a crown of thorns and everything like that. So I mean, this is part of the passion, his suffering before he is to die. I do want to highlight a couple of passages directly from the Descent of Inanna. Starting at 164, we have, after she had crouched down and had her clothes removed, they were carried away. She made her sister, Eric Kigela, rise from her throne, and instead she sat on her throne. The Anuna, the 7 judges, rendered their decision against her, which, again, 7, magical number, as you can tell. They looked at her. It was a look of death. I'm guessing it was a Mick Jagger kind of look. They spoke to her. It was the speech of anger. Basically, they talked in all caps. They shouted heavy guilt, again all caps, and then she was turned into a corpse and hung on a hook on a wall. Now, this is the crucifixion of Inanna. Obviously, it's not like a cross per se, but an alive or dead person hung up on something, whether it be a cross, a hook on the wall, or like with a stake driven through them or something, just pinned up in some way, that would be considered crucifixion in ancient times. And then the next verse after this is, after 3 days and nights had passed, her minister, Nimkabura, carried out the instructions of her mistress. So basically, it was after 3 days and nights, Nimkabura is going to go and get this life-giving plant and water to resurrect her in the underworld. And it's actually not Ninkapur that goes and does it. It's a couple other people who are mentioned. It's Galatura and Kurjara. They like get past all of these obstacles, and they request from this Anuna that they take the corpse that's hung on the wall, and they allow them to take it, and they give the plant and the water to her, and she rises from the dead. Well, that's not the end of the story, because right after that, they're like, hey, you can't leave out of here with somebody to take your place. And so she has to go looking for somebody to take her place. And what she finds is her husband, Tammuz, or Dumazid in the Sumerian. He has magnificent clothes on and whatnot, which is obviously not what she wanted after she was to go to the netherworld. After she was to go to the netherworld, of course, you're supposed to lacerate yourself and wear one piece of clothing and basically live like a pauper. This particular part right here is kind of mirroring, Jesus's whole idea of the fact that you have to give up all of your material possessions and to be like him, or to follow in his footsteps, and really just hold him or God or the heaven that they are promised in higher regard than any material possession. And that right there is what this particular part represents as far as the connection to Jesus goes. It's Jesus says that it's easier for a camel to fit through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to go to heaven, whereas in this one, it's the rich man that is actually sent to hell. This kind of mirroring often occurs in these types of myths. Of course, Dumuzid doesn't want to go and take the place, and he cries out, and Utu, another god, accepts his bitch tears and turns Dumuzid's hands and his hands into snake hands and his feet into snake feet. And then Dumuzid escapes his demons. And this is usually performed every year because they are an agricultural kind of cult. They're a seasonal cult, which, if in case you don't know, I mean, that's what the Jesus story is kind of based on. The dying and rising God motif is based on these agricultural cults. And so basically Inanna didn't want him to be down there, and Inanna, saved the husband, her husband. And so that's pretty much it for the Descent of Inanna. But to kind of connect this with some responses to when people criticize the Jesus story as having this skeleton of the Inanna story, a lot of times they will say stuff like Tammuz was rescued from the underworld by a faithful lover, being Inanna, but Jesus raised himself from the dead in conjunction with God, which it's not Tammuz. Well, I guess Tammuz later on came back by Inanna, but Inanna was actually raised from the dead. So, either way, though, the Jews wanted Jesus to be more, powerful than these other gods. So it makes sense that Jesus would do things like by himself that other gods would have needed help for, because he's supposed to be all powerful. So this particular distinction doesn't really hurt the whole hypothesis of Jesus being based on this skeleton of a story. They also have a problem with Tammuz, dying, or Tammuz or Inanna dying once a year because they're an agricultural cult. This is what we would expect out of an agricultural cult, but the purpose of Jesus was to fix a number of problems in the Jewish faith. And him dying only once and giving everlasting life was kind of the shtick for Jesus. That was the whole point. Otherwise, he would have just been another agricultural god, dying and rising god. So, that's just something that makes him different. And then, they compare him to Osiris, being that Tammuz is kind of the precursor for Osiris. Osiris dying once and forever, and Jesus rising once and forever. This is perfect mirroring in myths. For Jesus to rise and live rather than Osiris, dying forever, it makes sense because of the fact that they were preaching about this whole heaven thing and everlasting life. You wouldn't expect an exact copy of this. And then they also have a problem with Tammuz or / Osiris, his death and rebirth being brought to life to agriculture, whereas Jesus, his resurrection brings life back to souls. But again, this is more about what the purpose of these characters are. The purpose of the Tammuz Osiris character was to bring back life to agriculture. The purpose of the Jesus character is to give everlasting life to the souls of its followers. So, this really isn't a problem either. But anyways, heathens, I hope that you enjoyed that today. I really do. I hope that you guys will, go down below, leave me your thoughts. Let me know what you think about the Inanna story. I have all of the sources linked down below, so if you want to go there and read it for yourself, I implore you to do so. Let me know what you think about, the Jesus myth theory in general. I would love to have that conversation down there. Otherwise, we will be back next week with another Daily Bible podcast. Casey will be back. She will have all of her homework done. And so we will be back to the normal schedule next week. I hope you guys have a lovely, lovely day. Don't forget to stand up, use your voice, and I will see you heathens later.